Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I am answering a question I get asked all the time from my clients and my followers. And that is, how long does it take for overgrowth, whether it's candida overgrowth, parasitic overgrowth, bacterial or viral overgrowth, how long does it take for these pathogens to return after you've done a candida or some kind of pathogen cleanse? I love this question because it is so relevant to almost everybody's health condition. It's something that people don't realize as well. Most people that I talk to usually believe that once you do a pathogen cleanse, and I'll use candida as an example because it's the most common one that people know about. So people believe that once you do, say, a candida cleanse, once you don't need to do it again. And this is really false, and this will just cause you to feel frustrated when your symptoms are returning and you're not sure why. So I want to take a minute here and talk about how often pathogens return, so how often you should be cleansing as far as pathogens go, and the different types of pathogens and how they affect you as far as this timeline goes. If you guys have any questions, you can always leave them for me in the comments, and I do try to respond to everybody when I have some time. So the first thing that I want to stress here is that when I say pathogens, I'm not just talking about candida. I'm talking about all yeast, all fungus, all bad bacteria, potential viruses, and all parasites. So pathogens is the umbrella term for something, some kind of bad imbalance in the body. These infections that I'm talking about don't just pertain to the gut. They can also affect the vaginal tract, the urinary tract, the skin. So typically when I'm saying a pathogen cleanse, I mean a cleanse that can wipe out different types of pathogens, not just candida, and cleanses that will work on clearing out pathogens from the different hollow spaces of the body, so the gut or the vaginal tract, urinary tract, etc. Now, when we have skin issues or digestive issues or inflammatory conditions, food sensitivities, elevated histamine, whatever our issue or condition is, brain fog, anxiety, when we have these types of conditions and we find that a big portion, that a big factor, I should say, driving these conditions are pathogens, we want to work on clearing them out. So we do a kind of cleanse that involves eating lower starch, taking some type of antifungals, antibacterials, and antivirals. And we also do a lot of drainage, so cleaning out the liver and kidneys at the same time. And we kind of go through this cleanse to help eradicate the overgrowth that we have built over our entire lifetime. And by doing this, a lot of times we get amazing results with our symptoms. A lot of the symptoms that are driven by pathogenic overgrowth, also known as dysbiosis, get cleared up when we remove one of the triggers, which is the pathogens. That being said, though, depending on a lot of different factors, a lot of us have what we call biofilms. I would say majority of us have biofilms to a certain degree. Now, I've talked about biofilms on this channel before. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but what I will say is that, just very quickly, for those of you who are not familiar, just to keep it super simple, it goes a lot more complicated than this, but to keep things simple, essentially a biofilm is a slimy, mucousy, protective kind of dome that surrounds the different viruses or pathogens. It sticks them to the walls of the hollow spaces in the body. It could be the lungs, it could be the colon, it could be the vaginal tract if you have yeast infections, again, etc. But it sticks them to the walls of the hollow spaces of our body and protects them, so our immune system can't penetrate and kill them off, and neither can antibiotics or things like that. They don't work as well against these pathogens because they're protected by this slimy covering. When we're doing a pathogen cleanse, the goal should not just be to kill pathogens, because if you do have biofilms, excuse me, which people who have recurring infections usually do. So if you have recurring UTIs, recurring yeast infections, recurring oral thrush, recurring toenail fungus or something like that, there is usually, SIBO is a huge condition, very common condition that is affected by biofilms. So if you have any kind of these recurring infections or symptoms or conditions, what that means is that there's most likely biofilms present. And so when you have biofilms present, if you're just taking antifungals to eradicate them, you might kill, the surface layer pathogens at the very top of that biofilm, but you're not going to penetrate into the biofilm and kill the sorry, I have something in my throat. I'm going to take a sip of water, but you're not going to be able to kill the pathogens themselves that are deep in the biofilm, that are dormant and waiting to form new colonies. And so if you're not able to kill all of the pathogens out, then they're always going to be there and will slowly rebuild up their colonies again. So whatever you did manage to wipe out will just come back, and you're kind of back to having full-blown overgrowth again, which can lead to a flare-up in your symptoms. So it is really important to understand that biofilms are one of the big things that will allow pathogens to stay protected and not be killed off. People who have chronic conditions, or anyone who's ever been on chronic antibiotic usage, if you've had chronic stress, if you're Th2 dominant, etc., these are all factors that come together and increase your chances of having biofilms. And again, biofilms are pretty common, so this isn't something that I don't want you to think this is something that's rare, because the majority of the clients I come across do have biofilms. And the thing is when you have biofilms, when you get a stool test done to determine, or even certain blood work done to determine if you have dysbiosis or overgrowth, a lot of times you'll get a false negative. I made a whole video on this as well. But you'll get a false negative because they're not picking up what's in the biofilms. These tests are only picking up what's coming out of the body in, say, the stool. And the pathogens that are in biofilms are not coming out, they're in the biofilms. And so you'll have a false negative, you'll think that you don't have overgrowth or dysbiosis when in fact you do, and so it can be very misleading. So now coming forward to, okay, how do I know if my overgrowth is coming back, and how often or how long does it take for it to return? This really depends on the status of your health. First of all, did you do a proper pathogen cleanse the first time around to try and first break down the biofilm, and then secondly kill what's in there? If you did do that, your pathogenic overgrowth will return a lot slower, or maybe not even at all, if you follow a very healthy lifestyle. If you did not do the proper pathogen cleanse, which then maybe you should, and I have a full guide, I will link it down below. It's my seasonal candida and parasite cleanse that works on all different types of pathogens, and it works on also addressing biofilms as well, and drainage. So it's all included. It's like my best-selling program. I'm obsessed, and so are my clients and followers. So that's linked down below. But if you have not done it, I highly recommend you do, to start clearing out biofilms. But once you've done a good pathogen cleanse, your symptoms have cleared up a bit, and now you're saying, okay, how do I maintain what I've done so that pathogens don't come back and I don't flare up? It depends on a few things. Number one, it depends on how your lifestyle is going to be going forward. What I see as the most common case is that people who do a cleanse and kill off pathogens and do all that work often tend to kind of go back to old habits of eating pizzas and burgers and donuts and ice cream, and having high stress levels and not sleeping at the right time and things like that. So they kind of go back to their old lifestyle, and then shortly after, things start to return. A lot of people will lead their healthy lifestyle and stick to eating a clean diet, but will start enjoying alcohol when out with their friends and things like that. And a lot of times their symptoms return. So it really depends on how strict you're going to be. I always tell my clients, once you've done all of that work and you're feeling amazing, keep those results by continuing a healthy lifestyle. When you are making these switches to living healthier, you don't want to do this for a small period of time and then go back to the bad lifestyle that led you to have your health condition in the beginning, right? It should be something that you continue lifelong. And so what that means is, anytime you have high levels of stress, a lot of alcohol, or a lot of starches day to day, you are feeding the remaining few pathogens that are present, and they will start forming new colonies again. And over time, could be a couple weeks or several months, depending on how much pathogens you still have remaining, over a little bit of time, you will develop full-blown colonies again and will end up most likely with a flare-up and with full-grown overgrowth that you will then have to, again, re-cleanse and get on a strict diet for. When we do a pathogen cleanse, our goal is to break down the biofilms and wipe out as much as we can. And we're pretty successful at doing that, but it's impossible to 100% kill off every bit of pathogens or bacteria or yeast in the body. There's always a little bit left. And just because of our environment, we're always exposed to pathogens day to day anyway. So even if we were to eradicate everything, there's a good chance that we still would get some more new pathogens from our environment that when given the chance, when given a lot of sugars in the diet or high levels of stress that suppress your Th1 immune system and increase Th2 dominance, or a lot of alcohol consumption, if I didn't say that already, antibiotics, something like that. If we give these pathogens, this few pathogens that are there, this opportunity to multiply because our environment is off balance, they will take that opportunity and will multiply, and we will get overgrowth again. So again, to answer the question, how long does it take? It depends. It really depends on how much starches you're having in a day. I highly recommend 80-90% of your week. So about 6 out of the 7 days, you want to be still eating majority of your foods as protein, lots of vegetables, like low starch veggies, so greens and things like that, and healthy fats, and a small amount of your day-to-day meals should contain starch. And the starches that you are having your day-to-day throughout the week should be healthy things like berries or quinoa, lentils or millet, squash, things like that, versus breads and muffins, and even if they're gluten-free, and pasta all the time, because these are going to break down into glucose in the body and feed whatever is there. So if you're maintaining a really good diet and then you just enjoy a little treat on the weekend, you should be okay. But if you're having a lot of starchy foods day to day, which again I do see to be the case for most people, is they'll do lots of pasta and they'll have gluten-free toast, and then they'll have crackers and dip and something else and popcorn. And even if everything's gluten-free and clean, if you add up what you're consuming in a day between all the fruit and starches, it's still a high level of sugar. And if you have biofilms, or if you're prone to biofilms formation, you're going to have this recurring infection, and it can come back quite quick. So you can end up with overgrowth in a matter of weeks again, just after a cleanse. The longer that this goes on for, the more and more overgrowth you can build up. Some people do take months to rebuild their overgrowth again. Others, it could take a year or more, but the average that I have seen among my clients, at least, who are all prone to biofilms, because I mainly work with people who have recurring infections and autoimmune, their overgrowth can return in as little as a few weeks when not taking care of their health properly. So what is my advice? How do we proceed after doing all of this work so we don't ruin our work and we stay in maintenance mode? I recommend doing seasonal cleansing. What this means is you start off with a master cleanse, get it done, get the results, and then from there, after all that hard work, you want to maintain. So for example, if you were to do my seasonal candida and parasite cleanse, this is seasonal. So this is something you can repeat on an as needed basis with a couple modifications that I mentioned in the book. And so that way you can have a protocol to follow, whether it's twice a year, so spring and summer, or 3 times a year or 4 times a year. You have a little protocol you can follow so that you're going to keep the gut in balance and the pathogens throughout the body in balance, and not let them get to a point where there's more bad than good, because then that's where that dysbiosis or imbalance starts, and then you start getting more inflammation and histamine, food sensitivities, leaky gut, etc. So doing seasonal cleansing, however often that is done, is up to you, and it's up to your symptoms. If you feel like you're flaring all the time, you might want to do it more often. If you feel like you're in amazing health and you are following a really good healthy lifestyle day to day, you probably can get away with doing it once or twice a year. So it really depends, but seasonal cleansing is highly recommended. And then I also recommend, again, 5 or 6 days out of the week, you still want to eat lower starch with a couple modifications. You're not eating keto, you're not eating even paleo, okay? But you don't want to be doing potatoes and all of these super starchy foods all in one day. Say you do choose to have potatoes one day, all the other meals in that day should be pretty much carb free, in my opinion. So a smoothie at breakfast with tons of veggies, protein powder, coconut milk, etc. Lunchtime rolls around, do your starch. So maybe do a potato and some kind of potato salad and a side of protein. And then at dinner, you would go carb free again. So maybe salmon with asparagus and some avocado. Snacks could be guacamole and cucumber sticks or something like that. Or hard-boiled eggs if you can have eggs. So having higher protein, lots of vegetables is the best way to go. And then again, you can enjoy a treat here or there on the weekend. Okay, so seasonal cleansing, however often that needs to be for you, maintaining a healthy, lower starch diet and lifestyle, and really keeping alcohol consumption, antibiotic usage, anything that would trigger overgrowth to a bare minimum, if not eradicated completely. And then last but not least, managing stress. Stress is the #1 trigger for gut inflammation because of our vagal nerve, which I've also talked about extensively on this channel. When we have a lot of stress, we end up with gut inflammation. And if our gut's inflamed, then probiotics are dying off. We're getting a lot of immune cell activation happening in the gut, and this creates a favorable and damp environment for pathogens that are there, even in small amounts, to start to multiply and get more and more and more colonies forming until we now have a bunch of overgrowth again. So I hope that this helps. Again, there's not a specific number of weeks or months that it takes for overgrowth to occur. It really depends on how much starches you're having, how much stress you're experiencing, and a lot of other factors, like I said, how good your first cleanse was and things like that. But it could be anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months or even a year. But again, what I've seen is usually a few weeks. And I have seen clients spend thousands of dollars, and all of this time and money on protocols only to flare up full blown again and have full blown overgrowth a few short weeks later, because after they thought they were done with the protocols, they kind of went off track and had all of the desserts and all the treats and the alcohol, and they kind of let their sleep fall off routine and things like that. And then they're like, shoot, I'm back to not square one, but I'm back to having overgrowth again. And then in order to clear it, you have to go back to that really hard diet where there's no cheats again, back on all the supplements, and it's exhausting. So I always say maintain the work you've done. Once you've done it, keep it up by just leading a really healthy lifestyle majority of the time and enjoy a couple treats here and there, and you should be good to go. I hope that this video helps. Make sure you check out my seasonal candida and parasite cleanse. You will be so happy you have it. It's a complete protocol start to finish with everything you'll need to know, and it is a really powerful resource. It's linked down below, and I hope you guys have a beautiful day and enjoy the rest of your summer. Bye.